Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 469, written by Prestigious War 6913, Secrets of the 2-Minute Skip. A few years ago, I was with my partner at the time, and we were on the freeway heading home with her at the wheel. We made that commute every single day, and she knew it like the back of her hand, as it was originally her parents' house she grew up in. We were in our early 20s and moved in when they moved to a different state, to the point of getting off on our exit out of habit, even if we needed to get off on a different one further up ahead. We were both just listening to music, and I happened to make note of the time and looked up to see some landmark buildings and a shopping center that appeared right before our exit, which meant we were almost home. I can't explain it, but for a moment it just felt like I spaced out, unprovoked, really bad for what seemed to last only a second, and when I came to, we were a mile past our exit. For some reason, my ex and I both turned and looked at each other, immediately in disbelief. We both experienced it at the same time, and we were extremely confused as to why we were a mile past our exit when we were literally approaching the off-ramp. I'm talking like not even a half mile away. Then I said, "We just missed our exit, but how does that make any sense? We were right there." And she said something along the lines of, "I know, I was getting ready to get into the off-ramp lane. What the hell just happened?" I looked at the clock again, and it was still the same time. Usually it takes 2 minutes to get to the following exit, so it's not like we both managed to space out and miss the exit to the point of approaching the next one. Time-wise, it should have been at least 2 minutes past what I saw right before our exit. But it was the same. We couldn't get over it the whole night. We talked for hours about what could have happened, but ultimately settled on a glitch. To this day, I remember that moment vividly. Very strange. Case notes, file number 469. Time is fickle. We know this. It's woven with space itself, inseparable. You both skipped ahead in space, and yet time remained fixed, which would imply some form of teleportation. Or your speed was very near infinite for a very short amount of time. The latter poses more fundamental issues. A sudden increase in velocity of that magnitude would have produced g-forces sufficient to squish you both into pudding, so I don't think it's that one. And yes, of course, I want to say this was aliens, though the time anomaly in this case is very short. Perhaps it's not aliens. He also didn't report any anomalies with the car itself, especially as our vehicles are modernized with onboard circuitry, computer systems. Any EM interference can cause them to short out or behave erratically, which alien ships seem to always produce. And he also reported feeling off and spaced out for a brief moment before this happened. Could there have been some sort of spontaneous tear in the space-time around your vehicle, and you crossed through it, effectively folding you through a small amount of the universe, emerging 2 miles ahead or so in what amounts to the blink of an eye? Your subconscious felt this effect just before it triggered. The only issue with this, at least as we understand it now, wormholes are just theoretical. Einstein-Rosen bridges are called. They shouldn't be stable enough for matter to travel through. They'd be absolutely tiny. They can also create time paradoxes as well. I'm actually reminded of an old classic movie, Donnie Darko. If you enjoy trippy sci-fi fused into a compelling puzzle, definitely check it out. Case file number 470, written by Prometheus Titan God, Secrets of a House that Converges the Multiverse. For the past 3 years, I have been renovating my master bedroom. Okay, renovating isn't accurate. Gutting the room down to the studs, replacing the ceiling, floor, windows, electric, everything. I'm still not done because I started it right before the pandemic and all the curfews and so on. I'm also doing it completely alone on a super tight budget. To top it all off, I'm a perfectionist with some things, and I'm 50 with back issues. So yeah, I bit off more than I could chew. It doesn't help that I'm lucky to get a few hours a month to work on it. Okay, to the glitch. My sister also lives in the same house. Money is tight, so splitting the bills makes life a bit easier. She works the night shift at a big box store. I work a day shift somewhere else. So we only see each other in passing, so it all works out. I often need to work on the room when she is supposed to sleep. Another reason it's taking so long. but she's okay with it once a week. I'll often hear her snoring in her room, which is on the south wall of my room, or her walking around talking to herself, or the television in the living room, which is attached to the north wall of my room. So depending upon where I'll hear her, I'll try to work on the opposite side of the room just to be nice. The thing that freaked me out was as I sat to take a break in the middle of the room, I could hear her clearly snoring in her room. I then, at the same time, clearly heard her walking around and talking to herself as she was watching TV in the living room. I thought it was someone else here. As soon as I open my room door that enters the living room, the TV and talking take breaks. The snoring doesn't. No, she isn't sleepwalking. She has a bad knee. She in no way could run like the Flash, and no one else was there. It gets weirder. It's not an isolated incident. It happens regularly since I started remodeling. I know people think ghosts are ghosts. This is the house I was raised in. Me and my sister got it when my parents retired and moved to an adult community. I never had a ghost experience, not even when my father did contrition on the house back in the day. But I did hear things that can be classified as paranormal. As a kid, I regularly heard what sounded like someone in the kitchen doing kitchen stuff, like opening drawers and cooking at all hours of the night. There never was anyone there. Nothing was ever moved or out of place. My mother also admitted after a few years she heard it as well, thinking it was me or my sister until she got up a few times to yell at us, only to find the kitchen empty and us sleeping. The other thing I heard regularly was a sound of distant machinery and people talking like they were at the far end of a factory or a warehouse. I heard it so many times I can tell you details. Like it's always 2 to 3 male voices. They aren't intense. I can't understand what they're saying, but exactly like I am in the back corner of a warehouse just hearing normal ambient noise and going-ons. The machinery I hear is about like a conveyor belt or something like that. No, there wasn't ever a warehouse or factory here on this land. This house was built in the early 30s. Before that, it was part of a farm. Yes, there are factories close, but they are in no way close enough to hear what I was. And as a kid, most of them were abandoned, and local crooks stripped the place clean of copper and metal to make money on the scrap. Back then, my room had 2 doors, one on the south side and one on the north. The south door I locked and never used. I even blocked it off with bookshelves for years. I only used the north door. Since the remodeling started, I was temporarily using both doors for a few days. I always as a kid had nightmares about going through that door for some reason. When that was my parents' room in the 70s to 90s, they used both. Nothing traumatic happened to me in that house, so I never knew what was up with that door. I figured since I'm gutting the whole room, I'll get rid of that door for good. I overdid it a little and sealed it off using expensive extra long decking screws, pressure treated 2x4s, industrial strength decking adhesive. It's the strongest thing in my entire house now. I made it into a bookshelf that actually looks good on the wall. But now I can still hear things thrown at it. I don't know how I forgot to mention, but I also use special ridged soundproofing insulation while sealing it off. That room is almost airtight now. I went so overboard with insulating reinforcement and so on, it's like a freaking space station. I shouldn't be able to hear anything like what I can. But what tipped me over into the Twilight Zone? In that short time, I was using both doors every time I heard my sister in the 2 places at the same time again, where she actually ended up being when I checked, depending on what door I used. If I used a door on the same wall her room was on, she would be in the living room, and the snoring stopped instantly. If I used a door that opened into the living room, the sound of her talking to the TV would instantly stop and she would be in her room, snoring. Now, I know some people think I imagined it, but here's the kicker. I went on FaceTime with a friend who lives in another state. He said it sounds like your sister is snoring. I said, yeah, maybe. I put the phone on the door. He could hear it. I said, you want to see something freaking weird? I walked over to the other door and put my phone up to it. He said, wait, how is your sister watching TV and sleeping in a different room? I laughed, holding the camera facing the door to the living room, where you can clearly hear the TV and my sister talking. I opened the door super fast. Poof, silent, empty living room. I walk outside my room, around to her room, and she's loudly snoring. I then told him the whole story. He asked me what happens if you go back in your room and go out the other door. I paused and said I didn't know because I never tried going out one door, then running into the room and going out the other door. I closed my door and my sister apparently woke up, went into the living room and started watching TV. The snoring didn't start up for the rest of that day. I thought deeply about what would happen if I tried that, and my sister instantly changed places. That made me go so overboard with sealing off that door. Now, I really need to say I don't believe in ghosts, but I do think there are thin spots in our universe. I have come to the conclusion that my house sits on one of them. The warehouse sounds could be an actual real place in reality where my town was zoned differently, and the abandoned warehouses a block over were built where my house is. The sounds in the kitchen could actually have been one of us doing normal things one does in a kitchen, except in another universe. My house is a glitched place. Oddly makes sense to me. Perhaps that's why I experience so many glitches regularly. I was raised within a glitchy place. Or maybe I am the glitch, and the fact I grew up in that house has affected it. No, I don't think I'm Neo, but I know there seems to be a force at play that insists on my life going in a direction that I don't want it to go. The more I fight it, the harder it pushes back. It seems like whatever it is doesn't want me to do the remodeling and really didn't like me messing with that door. To answer a few questions, yes, I have carbon monoxide detectors. Batteries are tested regularly. We have it without even having a heating or air conditioner system that would put off carbon monoxide. I also tested for toxins like mold, lead, asbestos, and radon. As I hinted towards in the post, I tend to go really overboard with projects. Also, no one in my family history has any mental illness. The only thing even remotely close is situational depression, as in only depressed over a certain situation in life. As that event goes away, so does the depression. I am not on any kind of mind-altering drugs. I don't smoke or drink alcohol anymore. It's been like 3 years since I had a beer. I just don't have time for that nonsense.